Gentlemen, welcome to
Cartridge
Club. The first rule of
Cartridge
Club is talk about
Cartridge
Club. Second rule of
Cartridge
Club is you talk about
Cartridge
Club. Third rule of
Cartridge
Club. Someone yells stop, goes limp, taps out. The
Cartridge
is over.
Hello, gamers, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Cartridge Club. If you're new to the club, I'll quickly explain what we are. The Cartridge Club is a community of content creators and gamers of all generations. I'm Sean, or Player 1, and along with my brother Mark, or Player 2, we host a monthly book club for gamers. We pick a game and invite everyone in the club to play along, and then select guests to come on this show and discuss the game everyone played. Without further ado, let's meet our panel this month.
Hello, everyone. It's ItsRocketSauce here, and thank you for joining me on the 100th episode of the Cartridge Club. This episode will be talking about Final Fantasy VII, both the OG and the remake. On the show, we have the founding fathers of the Cartridge Club, Sean and Mark, aka P1 and P2, and probably the biggest reason the Cartridge Club is still going after 100 episodes, Dean, aka Round 2 Gaming. If you've played along, you can always share your own experiences in the forums at cartridgeclub.org, in our community's Discord, or across social media by using the hashtag Cartridge Club. Before I start the show, on behalf of the entire Cartridge Club community, I'd like to give a huge shout out to our Patreon Club backers like Joe Boyce, Barry Mars, Christopher Rohr, Dean Lasagna, and Caleb J. Ross. To our backers and Patreon supporters, thank you. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter for the Cartridge Club, please look into how you can do that at patreon.com/Cartridge Club. So, Sean, what is your overall thoughts on Final Fantasy VII?
I love it. It's Final Fantasy VII, man. It's a great game. It revolutionized JRPGs. It was the first game we owned for PlayStation. And the game was so good that fans clamored for a remake for decades until they finally got one. And then in rare form, we're not disappointed. Yeah. My overall thoughts are this is a fantastic must-play for anybody who's a fan of the generation, or the genre.
Okay, Final Fantasy VII. Okay, yeah. I remember this changing what I thought about video games. It changed the group of friends I hung out with growing up. I remember being enthralled by the commercials, just sitting in tears in my eyes, staring at what I'm looking at. I remember the day we got it on Christmas, and our parents surprised us with it. And once again, more tears. And then just the journey after that was just unreal. I loved everything about it. I loved the materia system. I love the cinematics. I love really just the storyline. I love how it was all sort of wrapped in a mystery the whole time. Anyway, everything I love about it, like Sean said, it changed everything. It made RPGs become mainstream. And then we got a remake, which isn't finished yet, which breaks my heart, but I'm looking forward to playing it when it's done. And yeah, that's just my overall thoughts. I would recommend this to anyone on any platform. Doesn't matter what you play it on. Just play it.
Was this the deciding reason you wanted a PS1? Or it was?
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. What was there before this?
I mean, Resident Evil, but we didn't really even know that existed.
I didn't even know that came out before this. You're right. This was the first one. We played Resident Evil 2 first. That's right. We went back and got the games that came out before Final Fantasy VII.
You didn't want like Road Rash or Croc or anything? Or...
Oh, no. No. I thought you said like good games. I didn't think you were referring to trash.
Yeah, this was it. We were huge fans. Final Fantasy 2/4, obviously probably my favorite game, one of the biggest games that was an influencer for us. We loved this series. Final Fantasy 3 was incredible, it blew us away. And then just seeing the commercials for this, it was like the game came to life, right? I mean, you look back now and they look sort of like potatoes, but at the time it was like, this is incredible. These cutscenes are amazing.
Absolutely.
And this was the driving factor. And in all honesty, if Final Fantasy hadn't gone to PlayStation, I don't know that we would have ever gotten a PlayStation. We probably would have just stayed with Nintendo.
Absolutely, we would have. And you know what? Now that we're adults and we're looking back, I think it's really just the drama of Final Fantasy VIIs that we love. It's essentially like a really good soap opera. Because all other RPGs just don't compare. I'm not a huge Dragon Quest guy. And it's really just because it doesn't have that gripping story, I think. That heart-wrenching scenes, and it's just not the same.
Yeah, there's no moment when your ex brother-in-law shows up and you've been married to his wife for 3 years because you thought he had passed away, and it turns out he was just stuck in a reactor core in Nibelheim.
Exactly, all that crazy stuff. That's what we loved.
Yeah. Oh my God, you've been asleep in a coffin for 30 years?
Exactly, it is a soap opera, and that's why all other RPGs just can't compare. It's fascinating.
Well, one more dumb follow-up question for you guys. Like, at the time, because now you're smarten up in this day and age with how games are, but like with Final Fantasy 2/4, did you know about that back in the day? Did you know like, oh, this is actually Final Fantasy 4, and then Final Fantasy 3, oh, this is actually Final Fantasy 6? Did you know that back in the day?
No,
I thought it was 2 and 3.
Yeah,
when
it
7
wasn't
came out, I
junior
was so
high.
confused.
Yeah, I was gonna say the follow-up then is like going from 2, 3, then 7. Like, did that throw you guys off? Like, well, you probably didn't care because you saw the commercials and you're like, yeah, whatever.
I thought I missed 5 games.
Yeah,
or 4 games. I thought I was like, oh my God, what have I missed here?
When they started showing 7, that's when we started looking into what happened here, and which is what led us down that path. But until then, wouldn't have had a clue. I remember a buddy of mine, it was the first time I'd ever seen emulators, and it was because he was playing a translated Final Fantasy V and blew me away. I was like, holy crap, why haven't I played this game? Turns out it was okay, that Final Fantasy V, but I see why they didn't bring it.
Not quite good enough for North America, right?
I'm afraid not. I know there's a lot of people upset for me saying that right now, but because I still love it. It's still a great game. It's just not the same. Not the same.
Nah, job system games are butt.
Dean, what are your overall thoughts on Final Fantasy VII?
I don't think it's a secret that FF7 is my favorite game of all time. It's been consistently my favorite game for the past 25 years. I think when people ask that question, there's a lot of amazing games I've played, but this sort of transcends the whole medium. Just any piece of media you can consume, whether it's book or TV show, movie, game. This is my favorite example of something that has resonated with me so well. Mark, you mentioned that it sort of influenced who you hung out with in school, and that's exactly the case for me as well. When I moved to a new high school, Final Fantasy VII was the reason I found the friends group that I did. And again, when I moved back for my 12th year, it influenced beyond just my time in my room or the living room. It was a pretty influential game overall. Since the compilation has come out and all the additional media, the books, the additional games, the movie, that's really only solidified my love for the story it tries to tell, or it does tell very well, and just the characters that are a part of it. It hits on a lot of really deep themes, really, really heavy stuff. that you don't see often in video games. And I think that sort of realism, despite the fantasy setting, really just gives it a genre of its own. I can't recommend this enough. Like, I feel like everybody needs to experience the story, whether that's watching gameplay, playing it yourself, just reading an article. It's just such a mind melting. It's hard to explain. Like, for the past 25 years, people have been digging deeper into the lore and peeling back layers, and it's still going. In the time we record this podcast, I'll have hundreds of different messages in the dozen Final Fantasy VII Discord groups I'm in about people finding new things, whether they're pieces in the background or lines of dialogue that were hidden or pieces in the code or with remake, different mods or things that have been discovered, what the developer's true intent was. It's just been constantly going. And this is what I imagine maybe the appeal of an MMORPG is, where there's, constantly new things to discover and new things to do. That has been the case for me with Final Fantasy VII. The conversation has never died. There's always been that group that has just been diehard to talk about it. And I'll take any chance I get to talk about it with anybody.
Dean, is it true that you've played the game 2,487 times?
That was an old count. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Obviously, my original email handle Sephiroth. It's
I remembered the number 2,487.
Yeah, man.
Pretty impressive.
It's amazing. Yeah, I love this game, and I don't know if you want to get into the first impression or first experiences with the game, Ryan, but
Go right ahead.
the marketing campaign for this in North America was huge.
Yeah.
Right after the success of FF3 or FF6, they brought this one over and they spent a lot of money making this sort of one of the PS1 staples. And you had that. There was a series of 3 commercials that would regularly come on YTV, which is a Canadian kids channel station. You remember that, Mark?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and they had like Hal Douglas, like the voice guy for like movie trailers, doing these trailers for a video game. And the one in particular I remember, it's so epic. It's like over 200 animators and programmers, a multi-million-dollar production, over 2 years in the making, and a cast of thousands. They said it couldn't be done in a major motion picture. They were right. And it's Final Fantasy VII. Like, it was all about the cinematic experience, and that's something we hadn't seen before. We were just sort of stepping into this new 3D generation. And I fell in love with that right away. Like, I vividly remember seeing that commercial for the first time. And I hadn't had a PlayStation yet, so that's the reason I got a PS1. For the listeners, if you follow the Cartridge Club on Twitter, every 3 days, usually post a new commercial from the game of the month from all over the world. So all different languages. And if you look back on the Final Fantasy VII month for December, there's about 10 or 12 commercials there posted from people got from all over the world.
That remake, the Japanese remake trailer. Oh man, that got me. Well, I don't even know if you want to call it a trailer. It was more like I don't know what you call it. It was awesome though. Gets you in the feels.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah.
So I even remember, you're right, Dean. I do remember North America did have a huge marketing campaign for it, and I clear as day remember seeing the commercials for it. Mm-hmm. And so much so that I remember like going to like a Sears, and they had a PlayStation 1 set up, and I think it always had like Crash Bandicoot in it or Final Fantasy VII. Yeah, and I remember seeing, because like the cinematics did take me away. That blew my mind back in the day until I saw the gameplay, and I'm like, what? And as a hardcore like Nintendo 64 fan at the time, I was like, I don't. This isn't a real game. This is these kind of things. So no, so I always kind of blew it off, and but there's something always about the game that had like maybe it's like a 90s-ish thing for me, where it's like 90s nostalgia for me, where like none of the other Final Fantasy games like did that for me, where like it had an interest of ever really playing it. Like seeing 8, I got a free demo for 8. Someone gave me a free demo for 8. Like I rented something or I bought a game magazine that came with Final Fantasy 8, and I played it, And I was like, I don't know. I was always kind of interested because you hear like the love people have for Final Fantasy VII. Something about the look of the game where I'm like, there's got to be something to this here where it still stands out to me. And I guess one more follow up question for you guys: is there any other like Final Fantasy game that has like this many spin-offs or like movies or like love that goes into this franchise? Is there any other ones, or is it just 7?
15 gets pretty close with its multimedia approach. They have some movies. They have a bunch of spin-off mobile games. 15 so far is the latest mainline entry. And then if you count the MMOs, FF11 and 14, they have a lot of expansions and different lore books and things that general MMOs come with.
Like I said, I've bought this game I think 4 times. I think I bought it. I bought it originally I found my original copy at a Goodwill about 7 years ago. I bought it on PS3 as like one of the PS1 classics for like $5. I bought it on my Switch, which is the version I played this time because Sean told me these wonderful features that come with the Switch version, which I think is the re-release of the Steam version.
Yeah, so they're on this. I mean, if you buy Final Fantasy VII now on any of the eShops, you get those features. So Xbox, PS, whatever number it is, 4, I guess, 5. Yeah, Switch. Yeah, so those features are there, and it is the Steam version. But they're just the quality of life, especially for somebody who doesn't really have time to spend 40 hours grinding or park themselves in the corner on the first level and attacking a ghost in the corner with a button held down while they walk away to level up. Or is that Castlevania that somebody did that on?
It's Castlevania, but still,
And it was Dean.
Was that shout out to episode 4?
Oh, that's a while back.
Yeah. He's like, I just parked myself in the corner on this ghost, held down the attack button, and walked away.
But yeah, like I said, there's something about this game that always made me like, you have to play this game. If you don't like JRPGs or turn-based RPGs, you have to play this game because there's some kind of magic to this game. And I remember even the greatest E3 of all time, the reveal of Remake and Shenmue 3. It was like, okay, you really kind of do have to play this now. And seeing, for me, Remake being more of an action-based game, I was like, yeah, this definitely seems like it's in my wheelhouse kind of thing where I really, really want to play a Remake. Yeah. And just real quick, because we put up polls here for the Cartridge Club. We have one of them saying, how are you playing Final Fantasy VII this month? And the Switch, Xbox, PS4 version won with 42.1% of the game. 31.6% said they were playing the remake version of the game. 15.8% said they were playing the original PS1 version. So we want to talk story. Dean, I'll let you take it from there.
Also, Dean, I'd love to. I've always associated the story of this game with Sakaguchi. Is he actually a part of the writing team on this?
He was the original creator of the game. And he gave the go-ahead for a lot of things, but between Nomura, Naora, Nojima, and him, yeah, they sort of fleshed out the story.
Yeah, I've heard Nomura's name mentioned a lot lately, and I'm like, who? Like, who's this? And then I realized, oh, he's actually he's been around, and I've been giving all of his credit to Sakaguchi alone, I think. So
yeah,
feel kind of bad.
And Kitase, of course, Yoshinori Kitase is he's a big part of this. But the remake is actually written from Nojima, Kazushige Nojima.
Oh, interesting.
Who is a great mind.
So who are all these people? If someone like me who's a dunce to Final Fantasy, who are these people, and how important they are to the franchise?
The Final Fantasy series generally keeps a lot of the same teams going through the mainline Final Fantasy games in terms of writing and scenario, certainly music with Nobuo Uematsu. So a lot of those same minds are sort of behind the overall scenario writing, and then they bring in additional people to really develop it out. But it sort of juggles between 4 or 5 big names that take on different entries in the mainline series.
And speaking of story, Dean, do you want to lead us down that rabbit hole? Because this game is very, this game is very story. So you're probably the man to talk about it.
And it's like, do you want Dean to go over what's in the game or the entire environment around it? There's so many different intertwined.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, you have sort of the mainline story that you play through. You have all the history. You have all the compilation. I know there's a lot of people that maybe don't like the idea of mystery box storytelling, or maybe just don't like, when J.J. Abrams uses that. But this is a perfect example of a game that sort of drops you in the middle, and you're constantly looking in both directions, right? You're constantly looking forward, and you're constantly asking yourselves questions about what happened, right? You're in pursuit of Sephiroth, but you're also wondering what happened to Sephiroth, right? You're all for helping Barrett, take down Shinra, but you're also wondering, why does this guy have such a problem with Shinra? You're ready to fight alongside Tifa till the bitter end, but you're like, what secrets is she holding back? Because throughout the game, she's clearly not telling you things. So you're constantly looking in both directions throughout every aspect of this game. And I think that's a really powerful way to tell a story if it's intriguing enough. And the idea that the more questions that get answered, the more questions there are, right? It's just layer after layer after layer of, peeling back more and more questions. And it gets really, really deep. When you talk about story icebergs, where only 10% of the story is actually told directly to you, and the other 90% of the story has to be sort of evaluated and dug out. Final Fantasy VII is a perfect example of that. But I don't know. Do you want me to go through really quick what the story of the game is?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, I think it's important to know what happened in the past. So, right, obviously in the beginning, there was the planet Gaia, right? It's a living entity with a will. It wants to see things play out a certain way. And within Gaia, there's the life stream, right? And the life stream is essentially millions of strands of memories and knowledge of everything that has ever lived and died. Okay, so when something dies, all of its memories, all of its knowledge go back into the life stream, gets recycled in there, and spurts out into new life. And so goes the cycle. We've heard it before in different mythologies, different religions. That is essentially what the life stream is. Now, the first known inhabitants of the planet are called the Cetra, or the Ancients. They were exactly like humans, but they could tap into the powers of the life stream, and they could communicate with the planet, and they had a mutual relationship. The Cetra could essentially go to any point in the planet and unlock the veins and allow the life stream to flow through, and plants to flourish, and wildlife to be born. And that's what they did. They were a nomadic people that traveled the planet to unlock the veins of Gaia to allow life to flourish, with the end goal of reaching the promised land. Whether that was a place, a state of being, a state of mind, we don't know exactly what the promised land is, but it was something they were in pursuit of, eternal happiness. So that's sort of the beginning of the beginning. Right now, somewhere along the way, somebody raised their hand and was like, look, all this walking sucks. I'm just going to sit down here. And a couple other guys were like, yeah, us too. Those people who settled down, they began to lose contact with the planet. They began to lose the ability to unlock the veins and harness the power of the life stream. They became what we know as humans over generations. So humans are descendants of Cetra that have lost their powers. Okay, so the cycles continue. The Cetra continue to unlock the veins of the planet, but then something happened that wasn't planned. A meteorite came from outer space and crash landed in the North Pole, the northern continent, and caused a massive gash in the planet, something that would take thousands of years to repair. And everybody's like, what the fuck just happened? Like that was not part of the plan. That's not something that belongs here. What's going on? So the planet's in pain. All of the Cetra flock up there to see what's happening. Riding on that meteor is an entity with a single instinct to destroy all life. So that's all it knows. It has no rationale. It just destroy all the life. We'll call it Genova because that's what it would eventually become or be referred to as. It had two pretty unique powers that I think are super important to the overall story of this game. One, it could shapeshift into anything, right? Genova can cut off its tentacle, and that tentacle could walk away as Cloud, right? Any part of its body, its molecular structure could shapeshift into anything. It doesn't have a central brain anywhere. Any part of it can do whatever it wants, okay? The second is a mimetic ability to be able to read the memories and the expectations and the mannerisms of anything it comes in contact with and adapt itself. And that's what it did. When the Cetra arrived there to heal the planet, the Genova said, I'm going to turn into a female Cetra, gain their trust, and then one by one it spread a virus that wiped out the entire race. They lost their hearts, they went crazy, they turned into monsters. There was only a few remaining Cetra who were able to finally seal Genova away. And now we're in a situation where the Cetra are going to die off. The humans were hiding this whole time. And Genova's still around, but it's sealed beneath the earth. This is not what the planet wanted. So the planet said, I didn't know that could happen. I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen again. So it used its power to create weapons, these big biological kaiju. Said if something ever happens again where the planet's in danger, these guys are going to wake up and they're going to take out whatever's threatening me. And that's how sort of time stood still for 2,000 years, right? Like the Cetra sort of died off. The rise of man came, industry. We had the coal miners of Coral. You had the Benora apple productions in Benora. You had mithril mining going on. And then this small company, Shinra Manufacturing Works, comes up, who made weapons, and they discovered a way to harness the life stream, which they called Mako, into energy, right? That's essentially the crude oil of this world. Fuel, electricity, whatever. And in comparison with the primitive energy sources that they had, it allowed them to become a superpower, overthrowing the Junon Republic, the pre-existing government. This company took over the world, right? They started with reactors in Nibelheim, Coral Gungaga. They built Midgar, which is, 9 reactors, 8 around, and then 1 in the middle. Like they essentially own the world, right? And because of that, they created their own private army, the Shinra Public Security Forces. They had the Turks, which were, the assassins, the kidnappers. They did all the dirty work for them. They had their urban development division, the advanced arms division. They had the space and aeronautics division led by Palmer. And most importantly, they had their science division. The best scientists in the world would all flock to Midgar to work for Shinra, the dominant employer of the world. And that's what they did. They were biologically engineering things. They were discovering all the secrets of these mysterious ancients who left tablets. And they got wind of something called the Promised Land, a land of abundant Mako, unlimited funds, unlimited money, so that they could become even more powerful. So that's what they're searching for. They led an expedition, a guy named Professor Gast, to the north, where they found Genova frozen or in the rock, and they mistook it for a Cetra. They're like, oh, this is one of them ancient people. So they brought it back, and they said, we're going to make more ancients. So they drew a bunch of cells from this ancient, who wasn't an ancient, this is an alien, and they started injecting them in people, trying to recreate ancients so that they could lead them to the Promised Land, so that they could make money. All the people were dying. This was Professor Gast, it was Professor Hojo, it was Lucrezia, it was the top scientists of Shinra. And then Hojo, who was more radical, we know him from the game. He's sort of a crazy scientist. He has very few morals. He decides, well, what if I were to inject these cells directly into the embryo before the baby is born and allow it to grow in the womb with these cells and essentially have the cells of this ancient? That was Sephiroth, right? So Sephiroth was born from the point of an embryo with Genova cells in him, and he became very, very powerful. And his genetics just worked really well with Genova's cells. He was patient zero. He was the impetus of Project S, which ultimately became Soldier. Hojo realized that these cells allowed people with the right Mako treatment to become essentially super soldiers. So he would inject candidates who were strong enough with the Genova cells, give them some Mako treatment, and create an elite group of fighters for Shinra known as Soldier. And those soldiers were sent to war. Anybody who was resisting Shinra's power, example Wutai, Shinra would essentially trounce with their army, and these soldiers would essentially help them. That's sort of where the story starts. So after the Wutai War, Wutai calls for a ceasefire. They're no longer fighting. They can't keep fighting this mega corporation. And so we have the rise of Avalanche, which is a rebel group, actually a huge rebel group. Barrett's group of, Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse, and Tifa are just a small splinter cell of that, to destroy the reactors, to stop Shinra from sucking out all the lifeblood of the planet, to try to, this eco-terrorism stuff. And that's where you come in as Cloud. Now, later you find out that Cloud's...
And this is where the game starts.
Exactly, yeah. But that's what's important about it, is that you're constantly looking back and learning these things, right? That's the whole mystery box storytelling. So you start in the game, and then the game plays out where you, pretty early on, President Shinra is killed, and you're in pursuit of Sephiroth, who was deemed dead 5 years ago, but you see him, you're chasing him, and ultimately you chase him to the Northern Crater, where you find out his dastardly plans. But the big twist there is that you were never chasing them of your own free will, right? Cloud has Genova cells in him from events that happen in the game. And Genova, essentially any cells that are around the world, all flock back to Genova's head, which is right now in the Northern Crater. So Cloud was subconsciously being summoned to Sephiroth by Sephiroth's will to bring him the black materia. But throughout the game, you think you're pursuing Sephiroth. So it's kind of a mind fuck if you think about it too much, but it's a really, really well told story. And I love it. So, but I've been rambling too long.
I think you did a great job. Also, so pretty much what you're saying is Sephiroth is what seems to be the big bad of the game, but really the big bad of the game is Genova, right? The whole time you're really just chasing. Every time you think you see Sephiroth, you're really seeing Genova, except for the flashbacks, I guess.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So anytime you see Sephiroth before sort of the middle of Disc 2, when you get to the Northern Crater,
right,
every instance of Sephiroth there is just Genova or a part of Genova.
Right.
It's really one of those black cloaked figures, the zombie people. That's the reunion project that was Hojo's doing.
Love it. And the funny thing is, I remember first time going through this game, I didn't know any of this. I didn't know any of this stuff until well after I played it the first time.
And I don't think there's, whether that's age or even now, like I don't think there's a way for you to latch on to exactly what's happening the first time you play this through.
Absolutely.
Right? You really get the most of it 3, 4, 5 times in. And like I said, after 25 years, I've played this game a lot, and daily I'm still like, oh, that's what that line means.
Right.
It's nice to have Dean as a tutor too if you're playing this game. Like I said, as someone who is a Final Fantasy JRPG noob here, I was kind of struggling my way through this, constantly having to go back to like a strategy guide to find where to go. And as soon as Dean started being my guide, we started cruising through this game here. So yeah, it's especially with like Dean explaining stuff to me. I'm like, I would be asking questions to the stream. I'm like, hey, do they ever answer this kind of question? It's been rattling my head. He's like, it's coming up. I'm like, okay, or that moment, it's kind of people like the Doctor Strange part where he talks about with Tony Stark. He's like, I can't tell you, but like when that moment comes, I'll give you the sign kind of thing. Yeah, Dean's been doing that for me, kind of as I stream, and he guides me through this game. So
awesome. Yeah, honestly, I could just listen to Dean talk here for an hour and a half. So.
Are there any key moments from this game that like stick out to you that you're like, I think Mark, there's one in particular for you. I know that you've asked for like remake that you would hope that they would be a change to here in this game. Remake.
Right, right. Yeah, how much are we going to get into
stand out
that?
to you that are burned in your memory that you're like,
Well, first of all, it's important to remember back in the day, the first disc or so, like getting through Midgar, is a completely different Final Fantasy experience than we had experienced at all up to that point. I didn't know there was going to be an open world part. I didn't know if it was going to. It was just it felt so much different, and then all of a sudden, boom, the world opens up. That was huge, and now it seems like Final Fantasy just keeps that part. That's their core premise now. Is that first Midgar part is now the mainline games is just following that format. But yeah, so that was huge. And then there's a very pivotal point in the game where a character dies. I don't know how. I guess we can pretty much get into
spoilers.
this.
I mean, the game is what, so many years old. It's not like a like hidden thing anymore. It's like in commercials still for like
Yeah, you know what?
PlayStation
Good point.
history.
Are you talking about when Cloud dies?
No, I'm not talking about when Cloud dies.
Oh.
But Dean had sent that commercial, that Japanese commercial. Anyway, they were talking even in that commercial. Are we going to have a way to save Aerith? First of all, is it Aerith or Aerith to you guys? I should have asked. I still call her Aerith. It's in my blood now. I don't know.
No, so okay, now, so okay, that threw me off because I thought it was Aerith, but then it's written as Aerith, right? In the original too. Is it both ways, or like what happened?
No, it's just Aerith. Anytime you think you've seen Aerith, that's a misprint. It's actually just Aerith.
Yeah. There's nobody who can confirm or deny what actually happened there.
That's right.
It's just it's a mystery that will never be solved. I guess nobody would be able to offer any kind of information on what actually happened.
Yeah, that's it.
Dean?
No, it's a translation issue, right? So in Japanese, erisu, the last letter being SU, because they don't have TH sound in Japanese. So they just assumed Aries, but it is Aerith in all the compilation and the remake and everything subsequent to Final Fantasy VII. So, but whatever you prefer.
But yeah, so that's who dies. So Sephiroth, or I shouldn't say Genova, ends up killing Aerith. And it's a hard moment. Once again, more tears. A lot of tears with this game. I just realized, but
it's probably the biggest Final Fantasy moment across the franchise. There's no other.
Good question.
You know, I mean, you could maybe say the opera scene in 3,
or the suicide scene,
or even the intro there where they're walking through the snow. That's pretty iconic moment. 4, fighting the black knight version of yourself to become a paladin, but none of these like.
I don't know, killing the Mist Dragon and having it be in Rydia's mouth. You know what? There's just a lot of moments.
But nothing compared. Like, I don't know, man. Just the cinematic behind it, the emotional. Because I mean, who didn't spend all of that first disc leveling Aerith up? Aerith up, like that's what you did, man. Like, oh, she's my healer. I gotta level her up.
That's it.
I can't think of a more iconic moment in the Final Fantasy series, personally.
And I wonder if it is because of that cinematic. I'm not sure. But anyway, like we were saying. Will they change that? You cannot save Aerith in the original. Will they change that for the remake? I don't know.
I had a friend who told me that there's a cheat code you can put in.
That was the thing. Remember, you had to find all those dolls or whatever, and we were like, "Oh yeah, you can save her if you find all the dolls." I'm like, "Okay, I'll find them," but nope, they lied to me.
Yeah.
Do you think if they change that for remake? Do you think that affects the overall story, though? Did you think that like would ruin like what the overall story would be?
It completely changes the story.
Yeah, you can't do it. You can't have an alternate ending. It has to be either you just save her and they completely change the story, or you don't save her. Like there's no. I don't think there's
to die. There's no way she needs to die.
Yeah, she sadly does.
Right, like it's.
You have something you disagree?
No, I don't disagree at all. I think she absolutely has to die. I think once you finish remake, which you guys should, the ending will kind of set a couple different expectations of what the rest is going to be.
Better set up a hot date with Jesse.
Yeah, maybe. But they can't just keep the trope that's been around for 25 years that everybody and their dog knows. Right, it has to play out slightly differently. So I think they are going to
Cloud kills her.
Yeah, give you
that could be
like a feeling like maybe she can be saved, and then in the most gut punching type of way, change that on a dime.
So-
It's not going to play out the same way. She's not going to be praying
Right.
at the water altar and then you're looking up waiting for Sephiroth or Jenova to drop down, right?
Yeah,
there's it's going to be something different where you feel like, oh, this has changed. She actually lives, and then suddenly, nope, she's dead. You could.
I'm gonna get hurt again, is what you're saying.
Yeah. They're
That's
gonna
on
try to
purpose.
elicit the same emotions that they did in the first one.
Well, that's terrible,
Hmm.
and I can't wait.
Well, Mark, like I don't know, like I know how far you are in remake, but like as someone who's been playing both, that impact for me with Aerith dying, what's called, or like her character so much for me, like building her up so much in the original isn't as impactful. And at first, I'm like, I see Tifa and how she looks in remake. I'm like, Tifa is the one I want to be with. But what's called, but now the more I'm playing remake, and they keep developing, forcing Aerith on me, I'm like, she's really starting to grow on me now as a character. Where I'm like, I'm starting to actually care about her. They're doing a great job of building her up for me, basically, for said gut punch come in remake, basically. So
You see, everything you're saying is actually, when I started remake, I was worried that they were going to. I never felt the connection between Tifa and Cloud that people seem to feel. I never had that, and I didn't. And then I thought, when the remake, they're going to change it. They're going to make it so that Tifa is the main focus now, and I was worried they would cheapen the relationship with Cloud and Aerith. But I'm happy to hear it doesn't go that way, because I haven't made it that far in remake yet, so that's a relief.
And like I said, at first it's I don't know what the proper wording is. Breadcrumbing, I would say, maybe is the word. Maybe
Foreshadowing.
Well, it's just like I said, at first you're like, she's kind of just like the little annoying girl, not leaving you alone kind of thing. But like I said, eventually she starts growing on you more and more. So it's almost kind of like I see what you're doing here. I'm not falling for it, and then it just keeps happening. You're like, okay, no, I like you, kind of thing. But like I said, that's one of the reasons I think I'm really appreciating remake as I keep playing it. Is like I said, the buildup of everything, maybe the smaller details of building it up that really sound like, okay, well this is cool, and maybe it's just cool playing both of them for the first time back to back and seeing what was, and then additional stuff to go on top of it.
Right. So that is a pretty cool, unique, perspective that you're coming at it from, which is cool to have on this show too, especially.
I should say it's also my first time playing it. I guess I mentioned this is my first time playing the game, as opposed to all of you guys being veterans of Final Fantasy and in this game in general too. So,
as somebody who isn't a massive fan of turn-based RPGs or RPGs in general, how have you been finding it?
It's if I didn't have Dean,
if it wasn't the game of the month, would you still play, or would you stop?
I would keep playing. I would keep playing it because, like I said, it was a game that's always like on the backlog where I always knew it was going to get to me at some point in my life where I had to play this game. I don't hate it like some other games I've played either. It's just, I would say the one thing remake has an advantage over, especially remake, that I said I'm still preferring remake over the original. But that's because I feel like the remake does a much better job of hand holding for me and telling me what I need to do, where to go. The original doesn't do that, and if it wasn't for Dean helping me, like I said, like I would keep using a guide, which I've been doing prior to Dean helping me out here. But having Dean as that person say, this is where you want to go and this is what you need to do, kind of thing. Like I need someone who doesn't understand like the system of how it works, like the limit system or leveling up, or what's called like the Mako system with materia. Like having Dean there, and like I said, the remake does do like some explanation, like, hey, this is what you kind of want to do. I need that because I'm such a noob to the game. Basically, a lot of it would have went over my head and past me. I would be getting destroyed and owned basically if I wasn't.
You weren't able to discern the 4.5 decades of backstory from the opening cinematic.
Yeah. Until I learn how this is how you play this kind of game.
Right. Just wait for them to remake it in the Octopath Traveler engine, and you'll be good.
There you go. I just need some guidance as opposed to just assuming it's something like you've played hundreds of times before and this makes sense, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So.
There's nothing wrong with guides, man. I used I didn't when we first played it, but I used a guide. I recently played through this. I think it was 2019. I played through 7 on the Switch, and I used a guide the whole time, and I loved it because I felt like you get a little bit more out of it. You don't miss anything, and you're not, it streamlines it for me. You're not wasting any time hunting and looking. Right? I'm 40 years old now. Actually, I'm 41 now, but I don't have time to be derping around looking for hidden secrets and dolls and.
Yeah, I got to tell you, like I was saying earlier, I'm a little bit ways into the remake, but it really makes you feel the weight of the terrorist acts that you're performing, which stood out in the original. But boy, does it hit you a lot harder in the remake, which makes me excited for the rest of the game because it really does, like you were saying, flesh out every little story beat more. My only fear is that it's going to take forever for the entire game to come out. Is there a possibility the next one that releases is the rest of the game, or are we thinking this is 3? Is it
trilogy.
already been confirmed?
It's going to be a trilogy. I mean, you can even see there is the original game itself lends itself to 3 distinct different games. Like you have Midgard, and then that is a game contained in itself. You can see that point when you leave there, where you get to the open world and it starts, and then when Cloud dies, it's like another game.
Yeah, that's a completely different game. You're right.
Yeah, or when he's on, when he's out of commission, and you got to play as the rest of the assholes.
Right, but that's it. I've always considered it a 2-part game. There's the first part, the second part, and then there's the crater, like the end.
Yeah, so they're going to be. It'll be 3 games for sure.
It's breaking my heart. Like
Yeah, and I actually heard they're going to make the crater game a fighting game, and you're going to have to be.
Here's a question for Dean. At the end of remake, do your characters continue on to the next part, or are you starting over again in part 2? Like, are you going to be?
No. So yeah, there's going to be some sort of a bag of spilling trope. There's no save carryover that we expect. Now there was an early level cap in remake. So I don't know what they're going to do. They may like stock you up with a couple familiar materia, but I don't know. I imagine how they're going to treat that is with Yuffie meeting up with the team, stealing all their materia, and you're starting from scratch.
See, that breaks my heart.
You pull a death here, like in Symphony of the Night, and just take everything from you.
Right, that's exactly what's going to happen, and that sucks. That sucks. I want it to be one complete game where I'm leveling up. I've got my level, and now I'm going to be leveling it up 2-3 times. Now you guys are thinking,
it's Mass Effect, right? You can start the new Mass Effect, and like, oh, you're dead.
Right. Literally, yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah. But again, if you guys finish remake, you'll have a different perspective. And
I just looked it up. I was going to buy it for my PC. It's like the only spot to get it is the Epic Game Store, and it's $100.
What?
So,
Canada.
That's
Canada.
Oh, right. That's true. That's like $20.
Yeah, in the US, it's just one vaccine mask, isn't it? That's all you got to give. It's not the equivalent. Under Canadian is 1 3-layer mask.
I mean, I paid like $18 for it for the PS4, and I got the free PS5 upgrade Black Friday last year. So
yeah, but 18 US is roughly a mortgage payment up here.
Yeah. One thing I'll say, if we're talking about like gameplay, that I think it really stands out to me with remake that I think is really resonating home with me is I feel like this game, you're gonna laugh about it, it's a lot of like Shenmue, where all the women are in love with Cloud. There's lots of places where you can just like go and explore in the city, where it's almost like I'm walking in almost every single door here. I don't know, like there's a lot of it that I'm just remembering, and I'm like, boy, this kind of reminds me a lot of like Shenmue. Not so much like the karate parts walking up. I don't know, maybe some of the side missions, even maybe they're like things you don't have to do, but you can do.
It's weird because I don't remember Final Fantasy being really boring and unfun.
Oh,
you know, I have the power to edit this, so I'm gonna make you say I'm not saying the whole game is, but there's definitely a lot of like where I'm saying I'm playing. I'm like, boy, this kind of reminds me of that. I guess I have to finish it to see how Dean carries over, because I think you could carry. It would be interesting if you could carry over, like if your Cloud save would carry over, or they just pull a Mass Effect 2 and they just give you like the comic book choice option where it's like you chose this and this is where you.
Right. I mean, I'm guessing. I don't actually. I shouldn't say that. I don't know what will be if decisions even impact anything going forward. Like I said, I haven't finished the remake, but man, there's so many things I want to see. I want to see when they go back. Where's Barrett from Dean? Or
Coral.
Dine is, and what is the name of that?
Coral.
Coral. I want to see that scene play out. I want to see his memory. Like there's so many things that I can't wait to see in that format, but I just feel like I'm going to be waiting forever, and it's killing me. It's killing me.
Mark, what are your thoughts on the turn-based versus the action gameplay?
You know what? I was really against switching to action, but after playing through 15, I actually didn't mind the action. And after playing Remake now, it hasn't been that bad. I think the way that they did it was done well. You can switch to the turn-based if you want. I don't like that they call it easy mode or whatever they call it, but but it's there. Yeah, no, I had nothing against the. I still prefer the original, but it's only because of nostalgia. I'm sure of that. But I did not dislike the remake action for sure.
I feel like that's one of those Mandela effect things. I heard that a lot when Remake came out, that people are like, I miss the turn-based of the original Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII was never a turn-based game. If you go into a battle and you wait, you're going to die.
Oh, right. For an ATB, you mean like an active
Yeah,
time.
it's an active time battle system. Like things are always moving. If you're moving through menus and you're like searching for a magic spell or something to do, then yes, there's no ATB if you have it on wait mode.
Right.
But if you're just sitting there on the sort of fight, magic, run, change, defend, things are constantly moving. And I think Remake did a really good job trying to incorporate that, like you said, in easy mode, but even in normal mode, the slowdown and everything that happens.
True.
But when you hear people say, I just want to be able to sit there and wait, and that was never a thing in Final Fantasy VII. You will die.
Yeah, true.
One thing I guess I like about the, I guess I would say turn-based version better than the action-based is the summons. And the fact that, like, I just want to summon it and I'll continue, like, in the action-based. Do your thing. As opposed to if you have to keep looking to give him something to do. Otherwise, it's just going to stand there until it runs out the very end and do, like, one more massive attack kind of thing. But other than that, like, I guess I kind of like the hack and slash feel of the remake. I keep forgetting because I just keep doing that, and then I remember I'm like, this is probably really important. Where I should probably switch to Aerith and shoot the magic part right here from a distance. And it usually happens if I get whooped by something here, and I completely forget why am I getting whooped here when I'm doing this one thing. Well, it's because at this point I should be switching to the other person so they can unload on them while this thing's happening. Dean, as someone who's played both, what do you prefer, the action or turn-based field?
I think Remake, I was hesitant for like an action-based battle system, like pure action-based. I think Remake has an amazing combat system. Aerial combat sucks until the Yuffie DLC, the intermission stuff. And I'm really excited to play as Red 13, as Sid, just jumping around and going nuts as a Dragoon and a dog. Like, I cannot wait to play as those characters.
It's cool that they made Sid the Dragoon.
Yeah, right?
Jacket. So good.
Oh, just leaping around, like getting some, because realistically, Barrett's fun for combat, but him being sort of the only aerial fighter, it's not really that great. There's not a lot of verticality in the combat, I find. And Cloud really is not great when it comes to aerial fighting. So I think my favorite in Remake is Tifa to play as, because once you get a really good hang of her, you can do some pretty amazing combos.
Sure.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I think
my favorite
Italian board, right?
My favorite character to have a constant 3/4 view from the back of. Is,
Oh my
Photo mode.
Yeah.
And Sean, I take it you'll be played on easy mode when you get a whole remake, right?
Damn right. Yeah. Ain't doing all that bullshit. Turn base. Let's hit it. Just like the original. Somebody mute Dean. Turn base is the wrong term. I want menu select. I want to just select from a menu. I don't want to have to I don't want to have to deal with it.
So who are your like parties of choice in the original FF7? Like, do you guys have a go-to set of 3?
I did. Let's see. My party of choice was, I like Tifa. I think I was Cloud, Tifa, Sid. I think was the one I went with.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that's what it was. Cloud Tifa Sid.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah, they
For me-
got good limits. Like Sid's last limit high wind is awesome, and if you can get the roulette wheels on Tifa's, like
Oh, no,
Tifa's
you know what?
stack,
Sorry,
right?
I lied. Yeah, it looks like I was going Cloud Vincent Tifa,
Okay.
and that would have been just purely thematics because I think Vincent's cool as fuck.
Yep.
Because he's a vampire, right?
Spent 30 years in a coffin, man.
Okay, yeah, good choice. Mine's very similar, but it's usually usually either Cloud, Vincent, and Sid, or Cloud, Vincent, and Red 13. That was always my my two groups.
Nice.
Although honestly, it should have just been Cloud and Aerith, and then whoever. But but it is what it is.
For some reason, I feel comfortable. I mean, I feel like a state of comfort when Dean's like, yeah, you can go with Barrett and Tifa here with Cloud. So I guess I'll say that is my thing, because I'm always like, okay, good, because I feel like I've played with them the most, and I feel comfortable. But I do like when I can have Red 13 in my group. So
Morpheus from the Winter Ion crew. He says that the party doesn't matter, but the best potential party is Cloud, Sid, and Yuffie. Their limit breaks are good, and their final weapons are among the easiest to get consistent high damage on.
Huh.
So that's the group he recommends.
I never even consider Yuffie. That's me. I don't know if I've ever even had her. I always got her just to do it, but I don't think I ever use her unless. Huh. Interesting.
And then he says he actually wrote like 4 tweets explaining this to me, and he said enemy skill gives you access to some incredibly powerful spells, especially for the point of the game you get them. Learn beta from the Midgar Zolam, don't need fire materia anymore. Learn white wind from Zemzalet, and you don't need cure materia anymore. Learn big guard from Adamantoy's barrier materia is obsolete before you can even buy it. If you go that route, I recommend waiting until you get the manipulate materia to make life easier. That way you can still go back and get a bunch at once. Some of them you have to wait, and beta still requires some creativity.
Yeah. You got a poison.
Oh, and then he says Big Guard, White Wind, and Aqua Lung are all big musts. Magic Breath is also crazy good. This guy, you should have had him on the show, Ryan. Why didn't you? Yeah, he went off. I asked, this was from 2019, I asked what people's go-to group was, and he educated me.
Nice.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a really good point. The enemy skill, I don't know if you've been using that, Ryan, but essentially there's a materia in the game you get right after Gold Saucer. And, manipulate materia right after Gold Saucer. And what manipulate allows you to do is to take control of an enemy and choose from a list of skills just like you would one of your own characters. And you could use it on the enemy, you could use it on yourself. And if you have the enemy skill materia equipped, if they use certain attacks on you, you get those attacks. So from the big snake in the swamps there, they use beta. There's the big like Venus flytrap monster, that's the Zemzelet, that has white wind. And the beach plugs and the adamantoys on the beach just outside the Gold Saucer, they have big guard, which casts like wall haste on you on all your party. So by the time you leave the Gold Saucer, you have like 3 of the best enemy skills in the game. There's also a griffin character or enemy in the sand dunes there. They have Aqua Lung, which is one of 3 water attacks in the game. So it's, like if you're using enemy skill, you can get some massive 4-digit damage early on in the game.
That big snake, what a cool start to getting into the open world is having that giant snake, man. So good.
So you can actually outrun that snake too. You don't need a chocobo.
Oh, really? I've never done it on foot.
Yeah, if you you can change your camera, or what you can do is I don't remember the second strat, but
or speaking of betas, you can just beat them and not run away. Just saying.
Yeah. Oh, you know what it is? Is you save. You run, you save, and then when you reload, you'll be a certain amount of pixels away from you, and then you just keep running and saving through the.
Cool.
It's actually really easy to do that on 3x mode. Actually, I did it a few times. Just ran through it.
Oh, really?
He didn't catch up to me. Yeah, I did at least twice on 3x mode.
Nice.
Oh, cool.
So, what are your overall thoughts on the graphics for this game? I know you mentioned something about a potato earlier, Sean.
Yes. The graphics
But-
in the original, I mean, they still hold up decently. The background graphics are incredible. Obviously, they look the same as they did. They look how you remember them, and I don't even mind the in-fight graphics, like the character models in combat, because they look more proportional. They look better. It's really, I find, just the open world, the short, stubby, chibi graphics where the hands are just blocks, and those are the ones that I think aged the least good. If they could somehow just use the combat graphics as the walking around graphics, I think it would still hold up like really, really well. But what can you do? The game's like 100 years old.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
remake, would you say?
I haven't played remake. I mean, it looks like you're playing Advent Children, so it looks incredible. It's, I mean, essentially Final Fantasy 15 graphics, and those are so realistic. They're, you can see their hair grow on their face. It's incredible. So yeah, the remake looks really good. I'm looking forward to playing it. And I like, because I mean, Cloud's sort of like got the spiky hair in the game, right? And people make fun of him. They call him the spiky headed guy, but they actually made him look. He still has spiky hair, but it looks like actual hair. It looks like you could maybe style your hair to do that if you were somebody who had hair.
Yeah. I will agree with you. I think the open world stuff is the only thing that I'm like, it just doesn't look the best, but I took in consideration when this game came out as well. But playing it through the Switch, I think the cleanup option of the polygons looking sharp actually looks pretty decent for what it is. I know I was doing that battle last night. Dean was kind of helping me settle up with the with Sid right there real quick, where you have to like keep setting up the defenders and and it almost looks like a
Fort Conduit.
polygon battle from the original Smash Brothers. But like I said, other than that, like I think it looks kind of sharp with the remake, at least, or not remake, the re-release for modern consoles. I think it looks kind of sharp, and like I said, I'm taking into consideration it's a game that came out from 1997. I wouldn't mind seeing more games kind of get that kind of treatment so much, where it's like, I mean, let's just say an N64 game or something like that, where it gets.
Yeah,
You
it
don't
makes you
have
wonder
to
how
get,
much that cost. Like, what was the cost in man hours and dollars for them to up-res it or upscale it to the point that they did? Because it looks great, and I know they did the same with 8, and they did 9 and 12. I think 12 probably required less, being a PS2 game, and those all look good. But yeah, that'd be great if you could take a large chunk of the N64's library and do that. I think you'd be really, really impressed. I agree 100% with that.
I think that'd be worth a re-release for your game as opposed to just dumping an emulator on your store or something like that. But for remake, I mean, it's stunning. To me, it's like I'm playing the re-release on PS5 at the moment, and it is just, I know, like, I didn't play it on PS4 because I heard and I know it looked great from the demo I played on it, but like I heard like there was like background images when people just fade right in because it's like the loading feature, it's the power of the console and whatnot. But like seeing the extra power running on the PS5, it is absolutely stunning what this game looks like. It's a draw to keep playing the game, I would say too, even with how beautiful the game is. It does feel like next gen to me playing it on the PS5, a next gen game where you get excited to play something they couldn't previously do on the previous console. So that's just my thought on the graphics. Dean, what about you?
So in terms of the OG, I absolutely love just any PS1 game with pre-rendered backgrounds is the way to go for me. I prefer that to polygonal modeling. The way they did this is Square, they had the Onyx supercomputers. They fully 3D modeled out all of the areas in this game and then flattened the images to the pre-rendered backgrounds. So that's why when you see when you're in Cloud's conscience and you go through that window into Tifa's room, it goes from CG right into the pre-rendered background sort of cube. That's how it works. When you see the escape from Shinra on the motorbike from Shinra HQ, you can map out exactly the route that CG, the CGI section, the sequence takes when you're running around. So I love that idea. There's constantly things we're finding with mods that are coming out to up-res the backgrounds. They use AI scaling. So they take an existing pre-rendered background and they up-res it. And we're seeing cool little signs in the back of item shops and this energy drink that seems to keep popping up everywhere throughout the different slums in the game. And a lot of thought was put into this stuff that, I find really cool. I love the cutscenes in the game in the OG. I think there's like 104 different cinematics, and that's a lot of what the the advertising for the game was based on. But Final Fantasy VII Remake for me is where it's at. Like I can't get enough of that game. Those graphics are so good, especially Intermission, like the Yuffie DLC and Intergrade on the PS5. It runs so smooth. And I know people are clocking this thing up at 120 frames per second on the super PCs they have built, and that would be incredible. So I can't wait to see what Part 2 has.
Is there any other game you like to see get the Final Fantasy VII like graphic update, like a game from the past that you think is a classic that you think would benefit from having a graphic update?
I think more Square games like Legend of Dragoon, Parasite Eve would be a really cool one to see, like fully realized in remake graphics. Yeah, just a lot of those PS1 titles. Final Fantasy Tactics. With some really nice
they should do
polish on
Resident
it.
Evil.
Yeah.
Parasite Eve, I second that 100%. That would be a great one to get this sort of love. Really, it's a lot of the stuff from the PlayStation 1. That library had so many good games, and I mean, you've played them then in your head, they look a certain way when you remember them. Like, oh yeah, this looks really good. But if you play it now, you're like, oh, it does not look the way I remember it. It would be nice if they could match that up.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Of course, for my favorite game of all time is Ocarina of Time. So I would love to see like a more expansion. I've probably done like what Dean's done to Final Fantasy VII, played it so many times, where I've played that so many times where I know every nook and cranny is where I would love to just, even if they went into a little bit deeper into it. I don't know. Maybe Twilight Princess is kind of that, but it's not the same game. But I don't know. I would still like to see. That's whenever Nintendo needs money, they can always pull that out of their hat of magic. But until Mario Kart 8 stops selling money, they don't have to.
No doubt.
So one of our other Cartridge Club polls for this month, we asked who was the best date. And in this game, you can date one character in the game. You have multiple choices with Aerith, Tifa, Yuffie, or Barrett. Cartridge Club selected Tifa with 66.7%. I wonder how much that has to do with remake. But Dean, you were helping me along the way and helped me set up Aerith for my date. Is that who you choose all the time as well, or?
No, I've gone through the 4 of them, and they all have pretty good dialogue. Aerith is what I consider the canon date, just because of what's revealed when you're talking to her and the implications that has. I prefer the Tifa date. The Barrett one is just funny. You don't actually get to do the play with Barrett, which would have been amazing. But he thinks you're just trying to get with Marlene, which is pretty risque to put in a game. And
isn't she like 7?
6, yeah.
Yeah.
And some funny stuff. Have you guys heard of shipping? Do you have ships in WoW?
Like relationships.
Yeah.
Ship two people together. Yeah.
The shipping community in Final Fantasy VII is huge, and essentially what that is promoting a relationship between two characters that either canonically or don't have a relationship. And it is so divisive in the Final Fantasy VII community between Cloud and Tifa, which they're called Cloudies. Cloud and Aerith, Clarith, Cloud and Jessie, Clessie, Cloud and Barrett, Claret. These people are so unhealthily obsessed with these
Cloud
ships.
Wedge,
Cledge, that'd be sweet. So bad though that earlier this week, one of the more high-profile shippers out there who prefers Clessie, Cloud and Jessie, actually was harassing Nojima, and who is writing Remake, and he says, "Please stop making Cloud and Tifa have such a strong relationship and bring back Jessie." Anyway, it got pretty harassy. And Nojima has essentially stepped away now from Twitter. So he's not giving us any updates on Remake, because this guy gave a pretty shitty impression of Western culture. To
accurate. He gave an accurate impression.
Yeah, sure. And this is Nojima. I mean, he posts pictures of his guinea pigs. That's all he does.
Right.
But once in a while he'll let something slip for Remake just to get fans excited. And he's like, I'm worried that my posts might give the wrong impression for remake. I don't want it to affect the project, and clearly I'm upsetting some of you guys, so I'm just going to take a big step back. So this guy is like public enemy number one right now in the Final Fantasy community, but it's a super toxic, but also really interesting group of people that this whole shipping community that I never realized was so big until remake came out. But there's people who swear by one date and only one date and don't even talk to me about these other dates.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
You should probably examine your life if you're that upset about two video game characters dating.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesse dies like right away in the original game, right? Or I misread that part?
No, you just leave them before they die. You just leave
You just leave them? Does she die, or am I wrong? Completely wrong.
Yeah, no, in the OG she dies. Yeah.
Yeah, I was
And,
saying,
and in the remake, presumably she's dead.
No, they're on a farm.
I don't know for, yeah.
Do you guys have any favorite music tracks in this game?
So the fight music is incredible. I still hum I have an add-on in Warcraft that when I kill a boss, the battle music, the victory music plays in Warcraft. But I mean, One Winged Angel is the best video game song of all time. So, I mean, I guess you could pick some lame theme song for specific love interest characters if you really wanted to, but yeah, no, it's One Winged Angel is. Yeah, I don't know anybody who would pick any song other than that as their favorite. Lunatics.
Man, there's a lot of good music in this game. I really want to say Eris's theme, but I love the battle theme. I'm going to go with Eris's theme. I got to do it.
Dean, what about yourself? Any favorite tracks from this game? I mean, the music, I guess, is okay. It's kind of important, right? There's only a traveling orchestra for this game.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, I think remakes music is
They
probably
don't
the
use the
best
same
use.
music.
What's that?
They don't just use the same music.
Oh no! It's amazing. It is so ingrained into everything about that game. That propels the story. It's the best use of audio I think I've ever seen in a game. Either that or Hellblade. But
Dean, if you don't pick One Winged Angel for your favorite song, we're gonna have a serious talk.
I think from the original, I would say One Winged Angel is for sure my favorite. It was the only track that was actually CD quality audio. Right,
Yeah.
all the tracks in the game were all MIDI. Right, they were all using the PlayStation's sound chip. Right, 24 channels instead of the 8 that they had on the SNES. And that was Uematsu. He didn't like the loading times of pulling the sound off the disc, which is why you could have such seamless transitions. When you have the opening bombing mission, which is another one of my favorite tracks, I love that first part of the game where you get off the train, and that song doesn't stop you. There's no battle theme. There's no fanfare. There's no anything. That song plays directly through right till you get to the bottom of the reactor, and then the reactor, or into the reactor, and then the reactor music starts playing. I would say Cosmo Canyon is another really good one, and all of the like Seto theme and Red 13's theme, like all of those around that same motif. But if you guys like, if I could like snap my fingers and learn one set of skills, it would be music theory, because people online who listen to this track who have no idea what the game's about can listen to Tifa's theme and be like, oh, this sounds like it would be a theme song for somebody who is very warm, very homey, who wants to do right by others, but is sort of questioning herself. And I'm just like, what? And the fact that you can like portray that type of emotion or that type of message just through music notes, and for people to understand it without playing the game just blows my mind. So I love just watching music theory on these tracks and just seeing how much is told through the sounds it plays.
Cool.
I like the opening track.
It's a good song too, man.
There's a lot of tracks in here, but like if I wish I had more time to dive deeper into it.
Yeah, just pick One Winged Angel. It's the best track, right?
Well, yeah, I know of One Winged Angel because I've heard it before. It's in like pop, video game culture kind of.
Yeah.
So
because it's the best song.
Yeah, so I'll see that one as well, Sean. I'll see that one as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like I just want to mention the music because, yeah, there is a traveling orchestra for this game. I can't think of besides Nier, but this is another Square Enix game that actually has a traveling orchestra for their game. Nintendo does one for Zelda, but it covers the general wide span of the whole franchise. And then there's what is it, Video Games
Live.
Today? Video Games Live, yeah.
Hey, do you guys still do three-word review on the show? We used to do them on the show when Mark and I were here, so I think it would be cool if we did them for this one. Maybe we can see if we have any. Let's just throw a quick tweet out and see if there's any three-word reviews.
Well, we do. Actually, as a matter of fact, we do right here.
No way.
Yeah.
Very convenient.
Do you want to take that first one there, Sean?
Yeah, for sure. JJS Boyce, at JJS Boyce, said, I played both this month, so we played the remake and the original. And he has 2 3-word reviews for us. The first one for Final Fantasy VII Original, he says myth-making masterpiece. And then for Final Fantasy VII Remake, he says remaking Final Fantasy VII anew. I think he's taking some liberties using FF7 as a word, but we'll give it to him.
We allow that here.
Yeah.
Dean, you want to take the next one?
Sure. This is from Bogus Meat Factory, who actually streamed his playthrough live on his Twitch channel. And he said, big, bold scenarios.
My guy Jeremy Threve right here hits remember save often. And I believe that's because he was playing the game and he wasn't saving very often. And did this file get corrupted, if I remember correctly? Or
he lost his save file. He was near the end, and something happened, and he hadn't saved it in a very long time. And I think he set it down. I think he's done because there was you get to that point too that happens, right? Like if you're not saving regularly, you think to yourself, oh man, I don't know if I can put in X number of hours again, especially for such a story-driven game where you're basically just playing through story beats. Next up, we have Canadian Retro. His three-word review at Canadian_Retro is not done yet. Now that could be, that has 2 meanings, right? Either he's still playing through the game and he's not finished yet, or he's talking about the Final Fantasy VII Remake not being complete yet because there's only one of the 3 games out.
This is from Tesseract Unfold. Eric, he says, unforgettable, melancholy music. Music is pretty amazing.
I like this last one right here. From All Cats Are Beautiful, aka at the Bubbles 949. So much grinding. So I'm guessing they played the original.
Is the remake more streamlined? Is there less grinding involved?
There's no grinding in the remake.
Oh, really? I might have to drop the 100 and get that. There's actually 2 more though, Ryan.
It's totally worth it. It's totally worth it.
From the Discord, we have Stumptown Retro, who said convoluted but fun.
Yeah, we have at Latino Lawyer, Diego. Yeah. He says fun cloud gaming.
He must be saving it digitally.
or playing on his phone. Yeah.
In the cloud.
Sean, why don't you give me your overall thoughts on Final Fantasy VII?
It's a masterpiece. When it came out, it revolutionized JRPGs. It revolutionized the idea of games as an experience, like a cinematic experience. I think I can't personally think of anything that came before it that made you feel like you were immersed in a movie like Final Fantasy VII did, and it captured the hearts and minds of gamers for decades. Right? I mean, look at Dean. First 97, so he first played it when he was 4, and he's been playing it ever since, to the point that psychopaths are harassing game devs online. Like it's an amazing game, and it really helped to launch that franchise into the next generation of game consoles. It's an incredible game, and I'm really glad that I played it as a kid, and that it still exists, that it's still out there. You know what I mean? It's just something that everybody is always able to talk about. It bridges that gap. So, yeah.
All right. My final thoughts, my overall thoughts of Final Fantasy VII. Okay. I love it. It changed my life in gaming, outside of gaming. It's got story beats that capture, a lot of grown-up elements, especially when I was a kid, that I couldn't wrap my head around at the time. I think, wasn't it Sakaguchi's mother died, I think, during development, which gratefully influenced what happened with Eris. Like, all this stuff, really, you could feel that pain through this game, which sounds terrible, but it makes the game so much more engrossing. And I love it from the start of the vision. I love the materia system. I love the summons. You mentioned summons. We had summons before, which were all cool, and they were super cool seeing the sprites in 6 and 4. But seeing the cinematics for the summons was amazing. Every time you got a new one, you're like, I got to see what this looks like in battle. Got to try it out. Collecting the Bahamut's was amazing. Anyway, yeah, I love it. I feel like Sephiroth gets kind of what's Sephiroth burned down a village, right? That's his crime. That's what he did.
Big whoop.
Which is terrible. It sucks, yeah. But Genova doesn't get enough credit, I think. She's really the ultimate baddie, or he, whatever that entity is the ultimate baddie. Sephiroth gets a lot of cred for it, though. But Sephiroth is so much cooler, I find, in things outside of the original game. But he was always super cool looking, no matter what. So he's a cool baddie. I still think Kefka's, a little badder, but it is what it is. In terms of characters, I love Cloud's arc, which is kind of mixed up and weird. I love the Barrett's background story and what led him to join Avalanche. Vincent's background story, Sid's background story. There's a huge arc around his past life and what led him to be where he is, the decisions that he had to make that happen. Anyway, so many good things. Can't recommend it enough. If you can play a Final Fantasy VII, please do. If you have any questions, ask Dean. He knows it all. And yeah, that's it.
Dean, what are your overall final thoughts?
I mean, there's so much that could be said about this game, and I could honestly talk for days. But I would just say, if you haven't tried it yet, give it a shot, either through Remake or through one of these modern console downloads. There's a lot of quality life improvements with 3x speed, with auto heal. You can get through the game very quickly and not have to worry about grinding and some of the other tropes of 90s RPGs. I would say if you're interested in the story, keep asking questions, keep digging. If you want to learn more about some of the influences of the game, I would suggest learning some stuff around Norse mythology, Greek mythology, Kabbalah. A lot of influences from the overall story are taken from these, and a lot of the way the story plays out is really through these different mythologies and religions that are really, really cool once you draw the parallels. I would say don't just stop at the original Final Fantasy VII game. Continue on to watch the Advent Children movie, to play a lot of the compilation. To make that even easier, later on this year, we're getting something called Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, which is Before Crisis, Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII, Dirge of Cerberus, Advent Children, the entire compilation of Final Fantasy VII media, aside from the books, in a single game on mobile devices, with entirely renewed graphics and a much more streamlined way to play, very episodic, but takes the entire storyline into account. And it uses the same sort of battle models or better field models than the original one uses. So definitely check out Ever Crisis.
Cool. So it's good, right? It's good.
Yeah. Sorry if I didn't say that. It is incredible. It's my perfect game. And yeah, please, if you guys have any questions about the game, any of you listeners, or things you're not sure about, or anything, just reach out. I love talking about it.
I think you've told me this before, but did you say, has your opinion changed on this one question here? Do you like Remake better than the original? Because I think you told me one time you're like, hey, this game actually might have topped the original, and I didn't think it was possible.
I think as it stands right now, if it keeps up the momentum and the quality that Remake does for the rest of the game, then it will be my favorite game of all time, collectively as a game. There's a lot of different directions that Part 2, Part 3, and beyond can go, and that may change. FF7 is always going to be top tier for me. But if Remake does the same thing it did for the first one for the rest of them, then it will no doubt be the best thing that anybody has ever put out.
Yeah, for me, I think it's a very important game. I'm having a great time as I work my way through Remake. I am excited to see where this goes forward because, like I said, I'm loving all the little extra attention to details. The game is beautiful. And like I said, I'm very grateful to have Dean there to be my guide through this game, basically, because I think I've enjoyed it more having Dean there handhold me, walk me through, because I'm like answering my questions, stuff that might have skipped past me because I might have just missed this area. There's things you can miss in the game that explain the story. But yeah, it's a great game. It's very important to video game history. Like I said, as someone who was an N64 fan, this was that game that I know sold a lot of PlayStations. I remember that was a huge year. I remember a bunch of kids in grade school got a bunch of PlayStation 1s the year this game came out because of that game. With that being said, that's the show, everybody. I'd like to give a shout out to all my guests, or thanks for helping on being here. Sean, can you tell us where you can find you and Mark?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Cartridge Bros. You can find Mark on Twitter at Cartridge Bros P2. That's basically the only spot we are online. That's it. Thanks for having us here, Ryan. Really appreciate it. It was great to be on for episode 100. Kind of a big deal, I guess. And it's been awesome to see the club thriving for the last 3 years now. You guys are doing a great job.
Thank you. You have to have the founding fathers of the Cartridge Club on for episode 100.
I mean, you don't have to, but we're pushy, so. Yeah.
Thanks for being here. It was very important to have you and Mark both here for at least for me, for being here. So I appreciate you helping out for this episode.
Yeah, I'm really starting to think you should have got Morpheus though.
Well,
Him and Dean could have just let them go at each other.
there's other Final Fantasy games you can probably pull them in for. So
yeah.
So, Dean, where can we find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at round_2_gaming, and really anywhere the Cartridge Club is. I've recently joined the Shinra Archaeology Department, doing some translations and graphics for a lot of Final Fantasy VII material that never was localized, and we're learning a lot of really cool stuff. So if you're interested in Final Fantasy VII lore, follow the account round_2_gaming. I'm putting out daily posts of pages from these Japanese books and documents that were never translated, that have a really skilled, meticulous team of translators behind it, and really excited to see what's getting uncovered. And yeah, join the Cartridge Club Discord, play the games of the month. Thank you so much for having me. This is my favorite game of all time. I asked for this game for October 2013, and they chose Silent Hill 2 instead. And here we are, a decade later, finally doing it. So thanks.
Did you suggest this in 2013?
Yeah, man. It's got to be a horror game. Silent Hill 2. Okay.
It had to be a horror game.
Then November. Nope.
Well, you don't forget, Dean. You also suggested it for a Patreon, and that's the one I denied you on.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I suggested
for the Patreon. Yeah, and I was like, nope, Dean, don't you dare put this game in there because I don't want this to win the vote. So yeah. I just spilled the beans full because we knew we were targeting this game to be episode 100. We knew when we saw 100 in the window, we're like, let's creep. Because I think it was even when we had the Patreon for whatever season 8 or something like that, or season 7. I was just like, I hope no one selects 7. Hope someone. Yeah. We were like, we saw 100 in the distance. We're like, that's what we want. And when Dean. I remember you said something like, it's a hard decision, but I'm putting my favorite game of all time. I was like, nope, don't you dare. So I would go back and tell him to come back with something else. So
pick a new favorite game, Dean.
Pick a new favorite game, Dean. I'd like to reiterate, January's game of the month will be The Revenge of Shinobi. If you're playing along or just want to discuss the game with us, make sure to let us know by using the hashtag Cartridge Club on whatever social media platform you frequent. For the month of February, the Cartridge Club is playing Portal 2. For those of you who want to get a head start on March's game of the month, March Madness is returning, where we'll be playing the Castlevania Advanced Collection. If you're ever interested in being a guest on the show, please reach out to us. We're always looking forward to having new community members on to talk about the games they love. To those of you interested in supporting the club beyond a review on the podcast app of your choice, I'd like to mention that the club is entirely funded by pledges made from our members of our community. We are extremely grateful to those supporters, and if you're interested in becoming one of them, please look at how you can do that at patreon.com/Cartridge Club. As for myself, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram with the handle ItsRocketSauce. But that's the show, everyone. We look forward to hearing from you next month. CC Unite.